My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Monday, February 25th, 2008, and I'm in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, interviewing Dr. Kay Goebel.
That's right.
This interview is being conducted as part of the inductees of the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame Oral History Project. Dr. Goebel was inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame in 1997 for more than 35 years. She has served as a counseling psychologist in Oklahoma City. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, let's begin by learning a little more about you. Could you tell us a little bit about where you grew up in your early life?
I grew up in northeastern Montana, and when I was born, my parents lived on a wheat and cattle ranch, and so I very early developed a love for horseback riding, and my mother and father, and then later younger brother, through my grade school years and high school years, rode horseback, skied, did those kinds of things. And then when I was 11, we moved to Boise, near Boise, Idaho, where my mother's people had grown up. My grandfather's people had come over from Denmark and homesteaded in Montana, and my mother's people had come from England and homesteaded in Idaho. So we had deep roots in both areas. And then I went to a very small school. My graduating class from high school had 17 in it. And then I went to a junior college in Boise, which later became Boise State University. OU remembers them very well from a year ago at the bowl game.
Mm.
Then I went on and got my first degree from Oregon State. And when I married my husband in 1951, he was in the oil business, and we moved many, many places. And during the first 7 years of our marriage, we had 5 children, and ended up coming down south in the middle 50s. And then in 1967, we moved to Oklahoma City, and we've lived here ever since. So that's kind of the geographic journey of my life.
Well, back on the farm, did you have a specific role, a specific duty you had to do?
Oh, you were expected to help out. I was born in 1929, so it was during the Depression, and it was very difficult times. I remember my parents working very hard, and I was mainly, just expected to do the things just to help around the house and to do the chores and feed the chickens and feed the calves and those kinds of things. But mainly just a helper, which I believe in that philosophy of children helping. I carried that on with my own.
Now tell me a little bit about the schools you attended growing up. Were they large schools? Were there small schools?
No, they weren't. The first school that I went to, the first 5.5 years, I moved the middle of my 6th grade, was a school that had one room for each grade. It was in Fairview, Montana. Then when we moved down to Boise, it was a little larger school, and there were probably 2 classes to each grade. But then my 7th grade year, it was very interesting. We were literally in a 2-room schoolhouse. The man taught grades 5 through 8, and the wife taught 1 through 4. And so that I would get through with my schoolwork, and I'd tend to talk to others and pester people. So this school teacher was so smart. Every week he'd go into the library in a local town, and he'd bring home books. So I read all the classics of Dickens and, all kinds of, all the women's books, Jane Austen books, all those things. And so if I'd finished my schoolwork, then I got to read a book. And if I wrote a book report, I read 72 books. But I thought that was so creative of him to find something that I love to read, and so he could do that for me. I got a good education, and then I wasn't bothering other people. Then when I was in junior high, the next year we went to a little town, the one that I graduated from, a town of about 900 people, so it's again a small school. And there are certain advantages to small schools. You can do anything you want to do. If you want to be an athlete, you can, and be on the school paper, be on school plays, and so on. So it was a very enjoyable experience.
Well, when you were in high school, what activities were you involved with?
Everything. I was the editor of the paper. I was in the school plays. I played some basketball. That I wasn't any star of any kind. Then I did ride horseback a lot, and just any activity that was around, I would be in it. But it was quite a change then to go to college, and I always loved school. I thought school was fun. But then when I went to college, it's just like a whole brand new world of all kinds of interesting classes and interesting professors and so on. So it's a very enjoyable experience for me.
Was education very important in your family?
Extremely. My mother had gone to college, in fact was close to a master's degree in math, and she had been a school teacher before I was before she married. And then when my brother and I were older and were going to college, she went back to teaching school. But there wasn't any doubt, as long as I can remember, I knew I was going to college and get a degree, which was fine with me. But I mean, that was absolutely, there wasn't even any question about that one.
Well, when you were younger, what did you think you would grow up to be?
Well, I was certainly of the era when women expected to grow up and have a family, and that's what I wanted to do. When I went to Oregon State, my degree at that point was foods and nutrition because I wanted to be married, and had started dating a boy that I later did marry. When we were 14, we went to the same high school together. Then the last 2 years of college, he went to Colorado State, and I went to Oregon State. But I never, ever thought that I would have a degree, a profession at all. That didn't even enter my mind. And most of our peers were having children and having 4 or 5 kids. So it was just more the true 50s era is what we grew up in. So it's quite a shock to find out that here I am with a PhD and have had a career for 35 years. It isn't what I thought I'd do.
Was college different back then than you think it is now?
Oh, I don't know that it's all that different. It was really interesting. Luckily, I'd done very well in school. School was easy, and I would always take 19, 20, 22 hours just because I liked it. And when we came here in 1967, of course, we had these 5 kids. The youngest was in the 2nd grade and the oldest in the 9th. And so college is looming, which meant we'd have 2 or 3 in college at the same time. I thought, Harry and I talked about it, and I thought, well, I really needed to do something. And I wanted to work at that point. I thought I'd done all the volunteer stuff and everything. I thought, well, let's see what I could do. And I really didn't have any clear idea, but I thought, well, with all these children, maybe some counseling training would be helpful. So I found out very quickly that to be a school counselor, you had to have a teacher certificate. So I went down to Oklahoma City University and found out they had a program there called Masters in Teaching. So I went, we moved here in March, so I went summer, fall, spring, summer, and got my master's degree and my teaching certificate. And then I got a job teaching at the school where my youngest son was going, quite close to our house. But I already knew that I didn't want to stop there. And so I went down to OU and found out they had this PhD program. But to go back again more directly to answer your question, is school much different? I really was wondering after being out of college for 15 years, even though I'd always done well, I thought, oh my gosh, the kids today are so smart. No, dear, well, it didn't take me very long to figure out a piece of cake. I had 15 years experience. Yes, they're bright, but there's nothing that beats experience and living life and moving into all parts of the United States and having 5 kids. And, I think that there's a lot of pressure on kids now to succeed, maybe more so, but in my experience, when I went down to OU in the PhD program, the kids would kind of blanch when they'd see an older woman come in because they knew she'd set the curve. They know what to do. They, by this time, learned to manage their time, and if they're back there then, they're really motivated and focused. So, I'm certainly not taking anything away from the kids today, but I think a bright, motivated person can do well anywhere, is what I think.
So you had really no trouble returning to the classroom in your 30s and then later. Wow.
I thought I would, but it took me about 2 weeks to figure out that this is not a problem. And I loved it. It was so much fun to go back to college. And of course, that was during the 70s era, the Vietnam War, all this excitement going on in campus. It was a very different life than the suburban housewife life I'd been living, but I'm also grateful that I was home for those 15 years with my kids. I really enjoyed all that. It was fun. It was fun to be with them and see them, develop and mature. And I just think it's I just had planned it all out. It's just luck. I just happened in the right place at the right time.
You wanted more when you started out in the local school here. What did you have your sights set on?
Well, I thought I'd just go down to OU and see what kind of programs they had. I didn't know. And when I got down there and found they had a counseling psych program, they'd had a clinical program, but it wasn't really functioning as far as training to be a clinician. It was more research oriented. I thought, well, I really would like to be in private practice, but I really enjoyed my graduate training. I was so lucky. I was the first intern that the OU Health Sciences Center took in in the counseling psych program. They had only accepted clinical psych students before, and that was a marvelous experience. The year internship at the Health Sciences Center. I had some marvelous professors, really interesting, exciting things. And then I luckily, two psychiatrists had just set up practice, and they called the training director to see what psychologist he would recommend that they would take into their practice. So before, well, I was probably halfway through my internship, I found out that, hey, I'm going to practice with these two men. Well, then I find out I have to have my dissertation completed before I can do this. Okay, this is about January. So now I have 5 kids at home. In the meantime, my husband temporarily had to go to California on his job. Then I had to devise and write, do the research, and complete my dissertation, which I did between January and August of that year. And I'm telling you, I've never in my life have I cranked it out like I did then. The kids laughed. They didn't see the dining room table for months. It just piled with research papers. So then I got that all done, passed. Then I find out the licensing board in their great wisdom, and I had so many extra hours it wasn't even crazy. I always took way many courses and retired. Then they decided I needed 15 more hours. So, okay, fine. So I took 15 more hours down to Health Sciences Center and just worked in their walk-in clinic, which was a great experience. You know, you just see everything. You have to really learn a lot. And so it worked out fine. And then January of 72, I went into private practice, and I've done that ever since. But you can see things kind of happen. It isn't that I have a grand plan. It just kind of evolves.
Right place at the right time.
Right time.
Well, what's the best part about being a psychologist?
I absolutely love what I do. Yeah, have always been interested in people, and I always love to read. And it's almost like just having multiple novels. You know, you get to know the characters. You begin to see what's happening in their lives, and people have a lot more capability to resolve their own problems than they think. I do not tell people what to do. That is not my job. But if I can help people first figure out the problem, discover what part they played in it, then they start to have control. Then instead of just sitting here bitching about, you know, the spouse or the boss or whatever, mother or dad, they can say, oh, okay, I can do this. And then you begin to see people grow and change, and their lives are going better. So it's a very rewarding work. And people ask me if I don't get depressed. I said, well, no. First, it's not my problem, it's theirs. And second, I know that they can learn to handle things better. So it's, you know, you hear a lot of uplifting stories as well as the struggles, but it's fun to see people, something that would block them and they couldn't figure out, learn, hey, I can do that. So it's very delightful work to me. And then another thing I did several years ago, OU Health Sciences Center was chosen as one of 5 research sites in the country with University of Pittsburgh, and we were one, and right at the moment, and Yale was another one. And so they had research going, and we did a 2-year pilot study, then we did a 3-year research study. So for 5 years, we're involved in this research, and you really began to get the statistical data and the facts to back up what intuitively I've been thinking. And as we would go through this, you began to see, you could measure it and quantify it, how people learned new skills and how they could change. So that was a fun experience too.
Is that when you were on faculty?
No, I never was I was on adjunct faculty, which means you work for nothing. But I never was paid faculty. I've always been in private practice. That's my source of income.
At what point did you go solo?
Well, really, I've always been by myself. I shared space with these other doctors, but I've always booked my own appointments, and people pay when they come in. I don't do insurance. I don't take credit cards. They pay when they come, and that's the way I've done it for 35 years. It works very well.
Now, when you're first starting out, is it hard to get new clients?
It'd be much more difficult to do now what I've done, because there's really insurance wasn't much of a factor way back then.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's a big factor, and because I was with the psychiatrist, that helped me some. But the way you build this practice is satisfied customers. I haven't advertised in years. I never did, really, except my name's in the yellow pages. But it's prior patients refer people. But if you're starting out today, it would be more difficult. And it would be, most young people, young professionals would feel, and they probably it'd be hard not to take insurance. I think you could do it, but you'd probably have to be more proactive in going out, talking to schools. If you're working with children, working with teachers, letting them know that you're willing to work with them. I mean, you'd have to do a lot more marketing and networking, I think, today. I don't know, but I would think that would be true.
Well, we learn the skills we need for our professions in different places.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you learn the background you needed for your career? Was it all in the classroom?
Well, looking back, I had my mother was a woman way, way ahead of her time. She was always questioning, and she'd say, and living in a little town is like living in the middle of a novel. And I come home with some story. She said, well, where did you hear that? How do you know that? I mean, okay, check out your facts. And living in a little town is a very good experience. Looking back, I can see that, and being in a small high school. Then really, I learned a whole lot by having 5 kids in 7 years. Luckily, my husband, Harry, was a marvelous dad. This may amaze you, but we never had one discussion over him sharing or helping. He just did it. If a child needed to be fed, if laundry needed to be done, if a meal needed to be cooked, if the dishes needed to be cleaned up, he just did it. So that was a tremendous help. But I learned a tremendous amount through that. And then we moved. I think we moved 35 times. We lived all over Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, and he was in oil exploration. We learned a lot that way too. And then I did have a good graduate education, and especially that year as an intern. We just were so lucky to have the experiences we had. So I learned a lot there. But then your patients teach you a lot. They're good supervisors. If you listen to them and learn from them, there nothing beats life experience, I think. That's been a big help to me.
Tell me about any stumbling blocks or adversity that you've faced along the way, or was it all smooth sailing?
Well, as far as academically, that was never a problem. Probably the biggest thing, especially when I went back, is just juggling all these things. Because Harry and I had a pretty active social life. We're involved in our church, or the kids. You can imagine all these kids and all their activities. So just keeping all that going, that was a challenge. That was the most challenging thing. But as far as actually in my career field, I've been quite fortunate. The psychiatrists that I officed with were very good and very fair. I mean, we worked out our arrangements that way. And I think really it was just learning how to manage my time. That's probably the thing that was certainly the most challenging. But over time, I learned how not to overcommit myself, and also when to say yes. It's kind of became a balance for me. Then another thing that I think has helped me a lot, probably 20 some years ago, I basically cut my practice back to half time, because Harry and I like to travel a lot, and also I'm very involved in the volunteer world here in Oklahoma City, and that has been a tremendous pleasure to me. So I really kind of went from full-time mom, full-time professional for a few years, maybe 10, until then part-time professional and almost full-time community volunteer. So it's been kind of a phases of life thing.
Well, speaking about your community involvement, you have been very well involved in the arts through the years. How did your interest in art come about?
Well, I really thought when I was a kid, I always liked to tell stories, and I liked to kind of fool around with drawing and so on. I thought I'd be a journalist and draw or paint and illustrate my own work. Well, you can see where that went. It didn't go. And my dad was an artist. My grandmother was an artist. So I've always been interested in it. And in fact, it's kind of a funny little story. When I was in the 6th grade in this Boise school, we had one of the classes we had was an art class. And so this teacher thought I really showed a lot of talent. So she thought I ought to go to the local junior college and take some classes. Well, my mom, when she checked into that, I was too young to go by myself. So my dad, who's always enjoyed painting, went with me. Well, he really picked it up, and he became a very good painter later in his life, and I kind of piddled around. But that was kind of, one of those things where I thought I'd do something and then ended up doing something else kind of a situation.
How did you get involved within the arts here in Oklahoma City?
Well, let's see. Really, this is funny. I had some friends. I'd made some friends at the place I worked out, and one of them was the executive director of the Arts Council, Jackie Jones. And so I said, well, I'd like to be a volunteer, and I started selling popcorn as a volunteer. Have you been to the festival here yet?
No.
You need to come down. It's third week in April. It is just a wonderful experience. So then I just started working my way up through the festival chain and became a member of the board and then on the executive committee of the Arts Council. Well, then when David Walters was governor, a friend of his said, is there anything? I said, well, I would really like to do something on a statewide level. And they said, well, what do you think you'd like to do? And I said, well, I really enjoy being on the State Arts Council. And so, lo and behold, Governor Walters appointed me to that. Well, I really enjoyed that. Betty Price was the director. She's just recently retired. Fabulous woman. And became very good friends with Betty. And within a little over a year, I was president of that board, or chairman of that board, or council. And I did it for 4 years. Well, I just loved it. And as part of that, you're part of the Mid-America Arts Alliance. So we went to the 6 surrounding states to meetings, went to New York, went to Chicago to meetings, and so on. And then another kind of a sidetrack on the art thing, I'd been one of the people who brought world-famous speakers in here about 8 or 9 times a year for what we called a Saturday seminar. And it was continuing education for psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, and so on. Well, as I started getting these speakers, one of them, Dr. Dick Simons, who's professor, he was head of the Department of Psychiatry at Denver at the time, told me I needed to look into speaking for the American Institute for Medical Education. Dr. Barry Panter from LA runs that. So I started doing that, and I probably have done maybe 20 talks for him all over the world. We've been to Europe, we've been to Spain, we've been to Greece, we've been to Aspen, Santa Fe, Hawaii, South America. So that has become fascinating. And the one artist I've talked about the most, and there's a chapter in a book about Michelangelo. Well, the first time I spoke of Michelangelo, I was in Florence, where he's one painting there, but a lot of his sculptures there. The second time was in Rome. And so when someone speaks on an artist, then the trip is set up. So then, like, we went to the Sistine Chapel, we went to see the Pietà in the Catholic Church there, St. Peter's. So that, when I just spoke in El Greco, we went to the Prado across the street, saw his paintings, went down to Toledo where his home is. So that has been a wonderful experience. And I'm speaking this fall in Australia. We're going to New Zealand and Australia. And I'll be speaking on Jorn Utzon, who is the architect of the Sydney Opera House. So that's been kind of another way I've brought psychology and art together, because when you talk about an artist, then you use their work to illustrate your points. So it's really fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Great for somebody who loves to travel.
Yeah, and I love to travel. And then here in town right now, I'm involved in the Allied Arts 2008 campaign. I'm the co-chair along with Fred Hall. In fact, Thursday night we're going to have a dinner. Jeanine Rainbow, who died last fall, and her husband Jean were the honorary chairs, so we'll be having a big function for him. So I'm involved right now with the Allied Arts. I've been in the Oklahoma Arts Institute board. I was on the Oklahoma Arts Council board for years. Oklahoma City Arts Council for years. And of course I was on the state board for 6 years. So that's where my volunteer work and my art interests have combined.
Where's your favorite place to travel?
Oh, that is so hard. I think I really probably just one spot. I do love Italy. But probably the most interesting trip I've taken, some friends, Harry and I, and one of my daughters, and some friends from Oklahoma City spent a month in Africa. And we went to Egypt for 10 days, and we were in Cairo. Then we went down the Nile on a ship, or boat, that this Abercrombie and Ken owned, went to the Aswan Dam, flew back to Cairo. Then we flew to Kenya, and were in Nairobi for a couple of days, and then picked up a Wings Over Kenya safari, and that was really an out-of-this-world experience. And then I have been to China and Southeast Asia. I would like to go back to China again. I haven't been to India yet. I want to go there. So I've got a list of things I'd still like to do.
That's great. Going back to art for a second, in 1996 you received the Governor's Arts Award. What was that like for you?
Well, it was certainly a great honor. When you get an award like that, or like this Hall of Fame, you just feel so humble, because you think, my goodness, I know so many people that have done more than I have. So you feel like it's just a really big honor for something like that to happen. And, I'm just glad that someone thought I would deserve it. I appreciate it.
Now, in addition to art, you're involved in many community groups. Why is it so important to be invested in the community?
Well, I have been very lucky. My life has been fortunate. I have 5 wonderful kids. 4 of them live here in town still. One son lives in Midland, Texas. And, there isn't any reason that you or I weren't born in Darfur.
Mm-hmm.
Or somehow our life didn't go well and we're down at the City Rescue Mission tonight because our husband got sick and we lost our job. So I feel like for me, I feel so good about giving back. And people ask me, kind of, why do you do all that? Juliana, I get so much more back than I give out. I've made such wonderful friendships, and I've kind of been involved in the arts volunteer world, but I've also been interested in the other side. I was president of the Calm Waters Board, which is a support center for children and families going through grief and loss through death or divorce. I've been very active in Planned Parenthood for years. I've also now, a new interest of mine is Girl Scouts. I've been on that board a little over 2 years. I just last Tuesday chaired their big luncheon. We had about 450 women there. Great success. And to think that there's a program that's really is reaching out to help girls be leaders, that's really rewarding. But I think those of us that are gifted, talented, time, talent, or treasure, we just need to do that for our own good. And hopefully making Oklahoma City a better place, and the world a better place.
Now, were you a Girl Scout growing up?
No, I wasn't. They didn't have Girl Scouts where I was. But my girls were all involved in it. And so I was a troop leader and helped them sell cookies and did all that. So, and I took a big gap here, but now I'm back into it.
Now, spanning your career and community involvement, can you go into either one or a few if you have more than one? Sometimes people say, I can't just give you one. Key moments that you consider some of your biggest highlights.
Well, honors like the Women's Hall of Fame and the Governor's Arts Awards are the kind of things. But kind of to go back, the most important decision you ever make is who you marry. And luckily I married a very good guy. That's because without his support and help, if you'd had a husband who wasn't willing to work with you and help, this would be really hard. And then Harry and I believed in child labor. We believed in those kids helping. And to this day, Harry died a year ago, just a little over a year ago. But the family and friends are such a support. So that's part of it. But just career highlights. I've loved doing the speaking that I've done for the art talks. Right after the bombing, I was very involved in that process too. I was on that board for 5 years. And I spoke to over 1,000 people in Santa Fe at this medical conference, talking about the bombing and the impact and what had happened in our community and how our community was growing and changing. I was part of the committee that was helping to choose the memorial design. So that was certainly a highlight. And then doing those seminars where we brought these top-notch people here to Oklahoma City. We had some of the very best in the world coming in here 8 or 9 times a year. And that professionally was very rewarding. And then I've been lucky. I've received many, many honors. I was honored by the OCU Societies last year as one of their honorees, and each time I get something like that, whether it's a Byliner Award or the Oklahoma Academy is another thing I'm very involved in and got their Key Contributor Award, it just makes you again feel kind of humble and think, oh my, I'm so lucky to have. I feel very fortunate to have had all these good things happen. Well, one other thing, this is kind of an interesting story. Highlights has nothing to do with my career. Maybe it says something about my personality, but as I said, my family and I all rode horseback. In fact, we had 2 horses each because we rode so much. So anyway, when I was 15, one of the local rodeos, Nampa, Idaho Rodeo, decided for a PR stunt they'd have a 100-mile horse race. You started out in Nampa and then you rode up into the Idaho mountains. Well, my mother was very smart, and so if we're going to do this, I was one to do it. She got the book. She did the training of how do you train a horse to do endurance rides. So we trained 2 horses, the one I was riding, the one she was riding, and then we decided to use hers because he was a little stronger, sturdier horse. So we started out, and it was, warm summer day in July, and these other fools, I'm a 15-year-old kid, these guys, most of them are men, I think there are about 15 women and the rest are men, 65 people, started running their horses. I'm going, this is pretty stupid. So I quit that, so I just started kind of riding my own race. Well, I was riding by myself, and it was a 50-mile ride, it was quite a ride. And So I got off the trail. I was so mad. I'm still mad to this day that I missed a marker. So I got off the trail, and then I had to figure out where I was. Luckily, I'd ridden around that country some. So I came in. Well, the next day, 5 or 6 of those horses died because they hadn't been trained right and they were ridden wrong. And only 12 people started back. I was the only woman. And I was 15 years old. And my horse was the best shape of any horse there because he'd been trained properly. And that night when we came into the rodeo arena, the other horses are kind of like this, and my horse was just like this. But that was quite an experience. And then what was interesting is some of those cowboys that I rode with, my dad had told them, he knew him because he had an international harvester shop, and they'd come into the shop and he'd say, well, Kay's going to ride in that race. And they'd go, yeah, sure. Well, they gained respect. So then they asked me to come the next 2 summers and do a 2-week ride, the 2-week roundup up in the mountains with them while they're rounding up their cattle from all these ranches. So that was pretty interesting. I love a good fight, and I don't lose.
That's good to know. Well, going back to your family for a second, did you have any siblings?
I had a younger brother who's 5 years younger. He is married and still lives in Idaho. And my mother was certainly my major role model. I mean, she was bright, very good looking. She was just strong on every issue. She and my dad started the Historical Society there. He was president of the school board. So this community involvement and giving back was certainly there. And she was very opinionated. She was way ahead of women's lib. The idea that a woman couldn't do anything she wanted to do was just, she didn't believe that for a second. So that sure helped me. This whole thought that a man's superior is like, whatever, kind of thinking. So, not that men certainly have their strong points, but no woman needs to ever take a back seat to anybody, in my opinion. I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy. We think we can't, but just make up your mind to do it and figure out how to get it done, and you can do it. And I believe that thoroughly.
Did your mother teach in schools?
Yes, she taught before they were married, and then when my brother and I were going, when I started back to college to help with that expense, she went back to teaching high school, and then she stayed on so my brother could go to school too. And
tell me about your family. Do you have children?
Of the 5, and I have the oldest daughter is Kathy. She lives here in town. And then the next daughter is Christy. She lives in Oklahoma City. Then the middle son lives in Midland, Texas, and he has one son that's a senior in high school this year. And then the next 2 children live 8 doors apart in a subdivision out northwest Edmond. And Jake was 22 this past week, junior to OU, and Lexi, Bart's child, is 16 and a sophomore at Edmond North. So we have 2 grandkids here and 4 kids here, and then Jimmy and Karen and Bart and Tracy are both married, and we have their spouses here. But we spend a lot of time together. We were all together Thursday night. We were all together again last night, so we have a lot of fun.
They still play a big role in your life?
Oh, extremely so. And then 3 of us have homes at Grand Lake, right just within steps almost of each other. So in the summer, we go up there a lot on the weekends, and again, it's good family time.
Well, tell me how you met your husband.
Well, I met him when I was 7 years old. He was a friend of my cousin's, and when we would come down from Montana to Idaho to visit, Harry'd be around. I don't really remember him very clearly, but when we were in high school together, and we were both 14, we started to date, and we dated through high school and junior college, and then, as I said, he went to Colorado State for 2 years, and I went to Oregon State, and then after we finished that, then we got married and been together. Well, it would have been 56 years last March if he hadn't died.
Now, how did you get to Oklahoma?
Harry was in the oil exploration business, and as I said, we'd been literally all over Wyoming, Denver, in and out of Denver 5 different times, lived in Cortez, Colorado, Farmington, Idaho, Farmington, New Mexico. So we're back in Denver, and one of the men he worked with had a crew going out in Winfield, Louisiana. And he wanted Harry to go down there and run the crew. And we thought, well, in fact, we were planning to build a home in Denver. And we thought, well, we've never been south. We'll just go down there for a while. That was 57, I guess. And so we went down there and ended up in Shreveport, Louisiana for 7 years and just loved it. I mean, it was truly leave it to beaver neighborhood. The kids are all playing with all the neighbor kids, walk to the school, they ride their bikes to the swim club. But then Harry had gone to work then for a major corporation, and they transferred him to Oklahoma City March 3rd, 1967. And then we've settled in here, and now we just love it here. This is home. We have so many good friends here. And frankly, I think Oklahoma City is just a renaissance city. I think it's really on a roll and can only get better. So it's fun, too, to be part of that.
Do you consider yourself Oklahoman?
I'm an Okie now.
Well, that's good. That's good. Moving to the Hall of Fame, when you were notified that you were going to be inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame, what was going through your mind at that time?
Well, I was really surprised. I mean, I just thought, oh my gosh, I don't really deserve this. I remember that thought very clearly. And then I realized one of my friends had done it, and I thought, well, I really appreciate that. If she thinks that highly of me, maybe I do deserve it. But it's really an honor to think that you're chosen as kind of representative of the women leaders here. And we've got some wonderful women leaders in this state, this city and state. One of the things I liked about being state chair is I got to know people all over the state. And then the Oklahoma Academy, I've been on that executive committee for about 15 years now. And that's another thing I like, is meeting people from all over the state. It's very rewarding and very interesting. And I'm truly impressed with the many exciting things that happen everywhere in this state. I think we've been overlooked, but it's partly our own fault. I think we're getting beyond that. And look at what's happening in Stillwater. My goodness, just all kinds of exciting things going on up there. And Burns and Ann Hargis are good friends of mine, so I think you're very fortunate to have them be part of your OSU family.
I think Burns will do a great job as president coming in. Now, 1997 was a long time ago.
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like it to me.
I've heard from many women, especially, back in the 90s, who've been inducted. Some could remember the ceremony. Do you remember the ceremony?
I do.
Could you take me through how it was structured?
Well, it seemed to me it was in Tulsa. Was it at the Gilcrease?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought. And each person that was presented had someone that would get up and introduce them. And what's interesting about something like that, maybe I'm not sure at the time if I knew all the women, but even women that I think I know, when you hear them inducted into something or receive an honor, you always learn so much that you didn't know about them. To me, that's always one of the really fun things about that. If you ask me specifically beyond that, I don't know. But several of my friends came from Oklahoma City up there, and that was nice that we had family and friends there that evening to enjoy it. So I remember that part.
Do you remember who presented you?
I'm trying to think. He was Speaker of the House at the time. Wasn't he? I was kind of surprised they asked him to do it, because there were so many people that knew me better.
I'll have to look it up.
Maybe it was the Senate. Because I didn't know him really well, which I thought was kind of curious. I mean, but he did a good job. I guess he did his homework.
Well, how do you feel that now people look at you as a role model?
Well, I'm honored, and I think that through my experience, my professional training, my life experiences, my knowledge of people, I probably have something really to offer to women. I think one thing, I think women need to get over the barriers in their own mind more than anything else. That's what I think, and I've thought that for a long time. To me, your attitude is the key to everything. And, I can't do that, or, I'm too tired, or, they don't want me, or it's your own self-talk. Pay attention to what you say. And how many times, this really irritates me. I'm 78. I'm perfectly healthy. I have no health problems. Take no meds. Well, a lot of it is I work out really hard 3 times a week. I go to work out 3 or 4, walk in between. That's number one. My mom and dad were both very active. Then number 2 is, don't say, I'm 50 now. I can't remember. I'm getting old. You talk yourself into being old. I can't remember. I don't have any energy. The only thing I can't do now that I couldn't do 70 years ago or 60 is have kids. I can do everything else. It's up here. I'm so strong about that, and I really sometimes kind of get on somebody's I was working with a young woman, marvelous director of an agency that came in as our director, and she said, "Oh, I'm 50, I'm getting old." I said, "I don't want to hear that ever again. And every time you say something like that, I'm going to jump on you." And so she quit. And she says, "Thank you very much." She didn't even realize what she was doing to herself by programming herself. And all these young people today, yes, they're great. I mean, I like the young people in my family are fabulous. But so are we, you know. If you learn, I'll tell you this, if you learn the lessons life has to teach, it just gets better and better. If you refuse to learn the lessons, it's probably not going to be so good, because you get a lesson probably several times a week. You get a lesson, but if you choose to ignore it, things won't go so well.
Do you have any advice for women who want to go into the field of psychology?
I would certainly check out the training programs. They vary. I don't know. Right now, if you ask me which program is best, I wouldn't know. But I'd check it out. I'd talk to the faculty. I'd find some students. They're in the program. And I'd go out with them and say, "What do you think of so-and-so? Who are the good professors?" That's one thing I'd do. Then I would also see what kind of life experiences. I maybe would be a volunteer, go to a mental health clinic, maybe be an aide in a hospital, maybe what kind of work are you interested in, child advocacy. If you had to even volunteer or just take low pay, I would try to really get a feeling for what it's really all about and get some experience that way. And then I would talk to some professionals. What's their experience? What are the the things that hinder them? What are the things they enjoy? I do a lot of research on that. I didn't do all that, but I would do that now if I was a young person. Just scope it out, you know. But as soon as I got down there to college, I very quickly started talking to the graduate students who were already there and saying, "Okay, who's really good down here? Where are the best places to get our practicums?" You know, just because the students know, you know that. The students know more than anybody, your fellow students. So I would certainly do a lot of snooping in that category.
It's a good way to put it, snooping. Now, if you could give advice, I'm going to call them, now your fellow Oklahomans, since you're Oklahoman. What would you tell them?
Oh, try to make the world a better place in whatever corner you're in. Whatever your talents are. It may be mentoring a child in school. It may be giving a big gift to some charity you care about. But try to make a difference in a positive way. And I think we can all do that. You don't have to have money. You don't have to have training. You can do something. Whether it's taking a meal to a homeless person or working at one of the rescue missions or, there's endless opportunities to help. Calm Waters is one board that I'm on. We train volunteers to come over there and work with our groups of kids. That might be something people would enjoy. But every day, I don't know if it's every day, but at least once a week in the Daily Oklahoman, there's a whole list of places where you can give your time and talent. And that's what I think people will be happier. I think the less involved you are in yourself, the more likely you are to be a happier person. And this is something research has shown. People who are involved and connected are happier and healthier and have fewer health problems, physical problems.
Well, what does Oklahoma mean to you?
Home. Energy. Here, Oklahoma still is so small, the state, that if you want to make a difference in this state, you can. Now, if you and I were in New York or California, it'd be hard to feel like, unless you just got in your own little community. But here, if you want to get involved and get to know the governor or the mayor or some exec in this state of some big company, you can. Where I think the opportunities are here for people to do so much more than some of the more populated older states. So I think it's endless opportunities in this state, and that means a lot to me, and I think that's a unique thing. Another thing, and you hear it too, I know, people over and over that come here say these Oklahoma people are so nice and so friendly, and I've met several young execs. I've kind of in a way mentored to some of the younger women that come into town, career women, in various fields, not just psychology. And some of them have come from California, New York, and they just love it here. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine going back to the big city life and the traffic, and we can have a beautiful home here for so much less, good education, easy to do. And if you can't find something to do, you can't read. There is so much to do in this town. And something that the Daily Oklahoma, or not the Daily anymore, the Oklahoman has started this new WIMGO. Have you paid any attention to that?
No.
It's a new kind of a website they've just launched, www.wimgo.com. You go in there and it is an absolute across the board, and they're trying to make it a statewide thing. It's starting here, of everything there is to do. If you want to go to a game down at the Ford Center and you want to click within 2 miles where the restaurants, if you want to schedule an event, you can go in there and put your event in to see if something else is scheduled. I mean, it's just, try it sometime next few days. Just see what you get. You'll be surprised. It's really interesting. As I said, they're trying to make it a statewide thing. So you want to go to SU to a game, click what restaurants are there. If you want to stay the night, what places are there to stay. You know, it's going to be pretty cool. So again, if you can read, you can find things to do.
I know we made mention of your parents and your husband and your family, but would you like to make mention or say anything about the people who have helped play an important role in your life?
Well, there's certainly been several of the people in the arts field. Betty Price would be one. Jackie Jones and Liz Eichmann, who are directors of the Arts Council, are very involved with them. Julie Knudsen, who's head of the Oklahoma Academy, has been a fabulous friend and someone I really enjoyed working with her. And then I've had several male friends. Gene Rainbold is a good longtime friend of mine, and he's certainly always a wise person to talk to. James Pickle is my co-chair at the Arts Festival 2 years. We were chairs of the festival the year of the bombing. And then we had to cancel it, and we did it again. And he and I have worked on things together. Oh my goodness. In the Girl Scout world, which I've just gotten into the last couple of years, there's Karen Luke, Ann Bohannon, Meg Salyer, Kathy Stackpool is the director, fabulous woman. Someone I hope you get to meet, because she is taking the Girl Scouts into the schools, which is a whole new thing. Nobody in the country is doing it as well as we are here. In fact, we're the first. So those are people, Barbara Butner, Calm Waters. These are people that I've worked very closely with just in the recent years. And oh my, there's so, I could probably talk another 10 minutes about all the women and men that have been really close, good friends and mentors. And you know, you can't get any of these big things done if you don't have lots and lots of help. And what I've found is anytime I do anything, people hardly ever say no. Would you like to help with this? Yeah, sure, fine. When Pickle and I shut that festival down, the next year, only 2 people didn't re-up again. And one moved out of town and one was having a baby about the day of festival. I mean, people are just, we had the most terrific volunteers. This luncheon we just did, we had 70 volunteers working on that. And they were, you'd think it was their professional job. They were so top-notch, so professional. It's just truly amazing, the volunteers and the people. And so I'd have to say all those people that have helped me throughout the years do all these events. I've co-chaired so many events, but I couldn't do it if I didn't have this great resource of people that are friends and guide and help to me.
You made mention of the bombing. Do you think Oklahomans have fully healed at this point?
I think for the most part. To me, I stayed on that board until the memorial was built, and so that took us 5 years. Then I got off of it, so I'm not as closely involved with the people who were in the bombing itself as I was. But I think for the most part, it became, we turned it into something that was a source of pride. And that memorial, I go down, whenever you go down there is someone down there, no matter the weather, no matter the time of day. I don't think I've ever driven by there that there wasn't somebody there. And I think it really touched the hearts of people across the country. And I think in a way, we realized we were better than we even knew we were. When that outpouring of help came within hours, I wasn't surprised. And people around the world, oh my gosh, and the rescuers, you've heard this story, the rescuers came in here, they couldn't believe how they got treated. So I think that all helped us heal. To see that we can do the best we can to pick ourselves up, to build something beautiful out of a horrible tragedy. And so I think when we traveled several times abroad after that, and we would say from Oklahoma City, people all over the world would say, oh, we remember that, and comment on it and be complimentary about it. So I think that has helped. And were you here when the bombing?
I was not.
You weren't here then.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching it on television, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't believe it.
Mm-mm.
At the time, my office was 6 miles from downtown in an office building over there at 63rd and Grand. My building shook so hard, I thought it was an explosion in my building. And one of my children, the one that has the girl who's now 16, she was taking a bath and he was in the tub. And she's a little girl. She came running out and said, "Mommy, my bath water's wiggling." That's from downtown to Edmond. And I think in Stillwater it set off some seismic shock waves even up there. It's just incredible. And that this guy knew exactly what he was doing. He scoped it out. He knew that children's nursery was there and just went right ahead. It's pretty incredible. And my husband was downtown at the time, and he thought a gas explosion had gone off downtown. But he walked over there, and he was so close to it that the glass was still falling out of the buildings. But he said by the time he got to the site, which is about 4 blocks from his office, they already had it cordoned off. I mean, we really showed our rescue people know what to do and how to do it. It was pretty incredible. But to answer your question, I think that the city and state overall feel. Now whether there's some individual people that are still struggling, I don't know. It could be.
Well, what is next on the agenda for you? You stay pretty busy.
Well, I do. Well, as I said, I'm co-chairing the Allied Arts Fund campaign right now, and it'll go on for another couple of months. And then the next thing I need to do is get to work on that talk I'm going to give in Australia and New Zealand this fall. That's probably the biggest things. And then I'm on all these boards. I was going through my tax thing, and I'm either going out to eat or going to a meeting almost every day to something. So being involved in the community, I'll still do that. And who knows? I'm always open for options, so something else probably will show up.
Well, when history is written about you, what would you like for it to say?
Well, the shortened version is I'd like to say she lived a full and happy life. She was greatly rewarded by having a wonderful husband and family and great friends, and she made a real positive difference in the city and state.
And finally, is there anything else you would like to mention that we have not spoken about today?
I think you've done a very good job of interviewing. I think you've asked all the questions that helped me kind of put it all together. And I'm just grateful you're doing it. I think it's really important that women really are seen as the leaders they really are. And there's been, I think, some kind of a pushback when women kind of came out of the bondage. We got to vote, we got to own property, and more women are going into positions of leadership and power. And I think things like this encourages other women to think they can too. And a lot of women, maybe haven't done anything, but when I was down in Shreveport, I loved it, but I thought, golly, surely there's got to be more going on than this. And I had a great marriage, had 5 great kids, involved in all this stuff, playing bridge all the time. So to me, I'm so glad I found a career that has been so rewarding, and then I found this whole volunteer world. So, I think things that you're doing and your group are doing to help women understand you can do that. Don't take no for an answer. You do anything you want to do. Now, I couldn't go compete in the Olympics. I'm not saying that, but, you can do a whole lot. We all can.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out to meet with me today.
Well, it's fun to meet with you.
Thank you very much.